What's up, everybody? Welcome to the VSM Real Estate Podcast, getting you closer to massively successful people in the Twin Cities real estate market here. I'm André Anderson, along with Ryan Schroeder.
Hey.
And everyone knows the man himself, Daniel Kurkowski.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
So you can tell he's a pro. He looked at the camera.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm trying to find my light.
So as all of you probably know, Daniel was doing a lot of podcasting before. You probably followed him on Minnesota podcasts, right?
Minnesota Deals with
Deals.
Rafik, yeah, that was a good
Rafik,
one.
Yeah, and then also the Finger Report, I think.
Monday Motivation with Goran Vazovic.
I was gonna say, yeah, and the vlogs. I mean,
you did probably 200 with VSM.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Your face and voice is over more VSM stuff than mine is, even. So.
You're welcome.
Yes. Wow.
Well.
Yeah, for sure. So we wanted to bring back Daniel because he's up to a lot of new things, super fresh take on commercial. And, can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Definitely. So we had, since kind of the end of Monday Motivation, we had a company called VSM Commercial that was owned by myself, Ryan, and Goran. And Goran ended up getting full-time into the logistics business, and now he's doing a little bit of everything. He's in the pizza business. He's everywhere. He's just taking over the world, conquering. Very excited for that. And Ryan and I had a conversation that basically, and you can fill in the blanks on your perception too, but basically it was about Ryan kind of recommitting and refocusing on the residential investment side. I had less interest in the residential side. I was more focused on the commercial. So we decided that the best course of action was to create respective companies, but to continue to collaborate. And there's just a lot of overlap that ends up happening between those two businesses. So the relationship is stronger than ever, and we continue to collaborate on deals and pass deals back and forth. Mm-hmm. But we now have a business called Obsidian Group, I do, with two other partners, a guy named Kevin Anderson, who's a former broker at CBRE, and an attorney at Great Plant Moody named Brad Heitzinger, who is very, very sophisticated. I still don't know how I tricked either one of those guys into partnering with me, but I did. So I'm very excited about that. And what we're doing is we're looking for value-add commercial real estate, 30 miles in the metro area, between $500,000 and $5 million. We're sourcing equity and using that to purchase these properties, increasing the value, either refinancing, turnaround, or selling them. And at the same time, to really facilitate that well, we need to get a good tenant rep business. So we're working with a lot of businesses who want to move in, find space that they can operate out of, and hopefully we can put them in our buildings. But if not, we're going to be a lot more proactive in the way that we're searching versus just looking for what's listed. We're actually picking up the phone and making a little bit more of an effort. So that's Obsidian Group.
So it's my understanding that you guys are also planning on putting together what amounts to a fund. Can you talk about that, or is that still in its infancy?
I think the SEC actually precludes me from doing that.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Nice try.
I almost got you to take the bait.
Correct.
SEC hired Ryan.
That would be a very interesting thing to do, and it's something that I'm very interested in looking into, but I don't think I can say any more than that.
Sure. Yeah. My apologies.
No problem. But yes, we are working with other investors and using other people's money to purchase commercial assets.
Isn't it the second time I've tried to bait someone into a discussion about a fund on a podcast?
I think it is, yeah.
Isn't this the third podcast?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay,
It seems to be a recurring theme for me to coax people into, making general solicitation claims on a podcast.
Real master at that.
August 14th, 1994. Where were you between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m.? Because there was a murder, actually, and I'm trying to get some background information.
Yeah. Well, luckily we're not talking about anything of that magnitude.
No, nothing.
So, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but a big part of the Obsidian Group model is emulated off of other people that have been mentors to you over the last few years. You want to kind of talk about how you got influenced to doing what you're doing?
Well, I mean, everyone knows the biggest influence. I've said it on many podcasts. I say it in person all the time. Rafik Moore, who is my co-host on the Minnesota Deals podcast, amazing mentor, brilliant man, tons of inspiration, and I really can't thank him enough. We own a building together, looking for more opportunities to partner. It's going to be a little bit of familiarizing him with the current partners I have, I think, and vice versa, and getting everyone comfortable on how to proceed forward. But really, what he did for me is he showed me a lot of what is possible. I think that's the hardest thing for most people to see. When it comes to investing in real estate, what we all do is I think we find something that looks like it could be a deal. You're on the MLS, you're searching, you're on Zillow. All right, this is slightly below market. I bet if I just did this, and I got creative here, and I self-managed, I could really find a way to make this deal work. And what I did unsuccessfully over and over again is I would take deals like that and I would present that to him. And he'd be like, very respectfully, but he'd be like, dude, what are you doing? This is not a deal. This is like so far from a deal. And so I'm like, okay. So I'd go back, I'd continue to think about it. And I thought I was getting better at understanding, my numbers were coming in right. Like I was doing that correctly. But I would eventually stumble into and find something that would be maybe one standard deviation better than what was listed. So maybe it was a property, and it was listed for 93% of market value. And I'd get so excited. I'm like, I found a deal. Finally, I found it. And I'd present it, and he'd be like, close. This is a 3 out of 10. You're almost there. So it was going one level deeper and getting to that, like kind of 2 standard deviations of a better deal than what the market is currently offering, that I felt really comfortable as, okay, this is something worth taking down. And without having a mentor or somebody who can point to those deals and say, hey, look at this deal that I did. Find this. The stuff you're looking at is a waste of time and you're spinning your wheels. You don't believe that it exists. So the first part, I think, to being successful in finding these investments is to actually believe that what you're looking for exists, being able to identify it and know what it looks like.
Very true.
So given that you've been seeking deals in the residential space and you've done those types of things in the past and you've made money on them and things like that, and now that you're doing it in commercial, what would you say are the main differences between sort of seeking value in residential versus commercial?
Well, the biggest difference that I felt right away is in commercial, I didn't make any money for a long time. I think last year I did better than I did when it was focused purely on residential when I just started in commercial, but barely, and it took a lot of work. So that was the first thing, is I had to relearn an entirely new business. And the learning curve was probably about a year to get to the point where I was at the relative competency that I was. I'm not saying that I got it all figured out. There's a lot of runway still to go, but to be at about the same level. So that was the biggest first thing that I had to overcome. And then the other difference in finding these is, it's more about knowing the value and speculating on the value that a tenant can pay for that building versus knowing and speculating on the value that an end user would pay or that the market has somewhat commoditized that value to be at. Meaning, if I'm buying or flipping a house in South Minneapolis, it's a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,000-square-foot house. How many of those are in South Minneapolis?
Yeah, there's a million, yeah.
50% of all the houses that are there. So it's very easy to look at what's available and say, well, if I do this, and I get my house to be 5% better than all the houses that sold at this price, mine will sell likely at that price, if not, 5% higher. In the commercial world, it's more, you're finding the value add. They're valued on the income that they produce, right? Same as apartments, same as some parts of the residential world, but it's much more important in commercial. So it's a little bit trickier because there's not the same comps. When a lease is signed, that's not recorded. That's not public record. You can't access what everyone's paying. And if you call a tenant and you say, hey, what are you paying for rent? They might tell you. They're not super excited about it. And the landlord definitely doesn't want to tell you because they're afraid that you're going to try and steal their tenant, right? And the broker, they probably don't want to tell you either. So it's a slow ability to gather a lot of that information. And that's part of why the tenant rep side is so important to us, is if we have people who place 15 tenants in Roseville, for example, then I have a pretty good data set of how these deals came together, what needed to be spent to get what sort of rents, and how long it took to fill those vacancies. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is dealing with a little bit less information. It's a little bit more of a gut feel type situation because you're kind of speculating. It's a lot less of a commodity. commercial real estate is unique and illiquid. That's kind of the standard definition that they like to use when comparing it to stocks and bonds. So it can be a bit of a challenge.
So given that you've been primarily just a buyer of real estate, commercial real estate at this point, and never a seller, how do you feel about basically the lack of liquidity in these? Do you think that that's something you'll be able to solve by having them fully rented and presented in a certain way, or do you think you're still going to struggle with a long disposition?
I think that's definitely a risk. I think the good news is I haven't bought a piece of property yet where I haven't already been offered more than I've paid for it, and I've just declined that because I want to realize a little bit more of that value for myself. So that is a definite consideration. But again, to the point, Ryan hosted this very interesting seminar, and I don't know if you talked about that on the podcast or not.
I don't think we did, actually, believe it or not.
We just plugged it
last
time. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So this week.
Yeah, Wednesday, 2 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago. Wow. 2 days ago.
Time flies.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
You hosted the seminar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in it, we were talking about a little bit. You made the very articulate point that's a commonly made one in real estate. You make your money when you buy. So, again, gating that deal that's 2 standard deviations better than market, and having that buffer is so important. Because that's really what does protect you, particularly when you have such an illiquid asset.
Yeah. I think that goes to with just about anything that you make your money when you buy in real estate. Because if you're buying under market value and you have sound fundamentals, keeping it rented and all that, you're pretty much assured to sell for more than you paid for it, as long as the market conditions at large don't turn on you in the short term. So
that was a lesson that I think you remember probably a year into my career doing residential real estate. I was getting into the investment side and started learning as much as possible and had to proclaim everything that I learned. And like, Ryan, we got to sell everything right now. The whole thing's falling apart.
I do recall.
Yeah, you remember?
Good thing I didn't listen.
Right. But I did, right?
The wheels are coming off.
But a lot of the evidence pointed that way, and
right.
This is the first time I was ever exposed to the idea of, hey, this thing doesn't last forever, and the struggle of a potential liquidity crisis. And you said, if you buy for value, you should never be in too bad a shape. Where that value is going to depend a lot on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about I read Ray Dalio's book Principles. I'm obsessed with it. I talk about it all the time. And what he did is he made these bold proclamations in 1982 about the state of the economy. Yep. And when he was wrong, because the government handled it in a way that he did not expect them to, he went back with a computer and mapped out every economic crisis in the U.S. back to its inception, and then went to other countries and started doing the same thing to create this predictive modeling, and got it very, very accurate. And the thing that I thought was so interesting with that was, there's just so many variables in what drives an economy and what makes it work. But there's kind of 2 ideas. One is you can predict the overall direction that the economy is going, and I think that's what a lot of REITs try and do, and a lot of the big institutional investors is they're like, well, this asset in general seems to be undervalued because we look at XYZ metric, and it just seems like there's some gap here where there's room for growth. So we're going to take a position, and we're going to take $1 billion, and we're going to invest it into this asset, and over time it's going to increase in value. It's going to go up. And we're going to make some marginal difference, but it's going to be, because we're going to leverage it, whatever. It ends up being a lot of money. And then there's this other idea, which has a somewhat negative connotation, which is the idea of called economic rent. Have you ever heard that? So economic rent is essentially, you can think of it as acquiring something. It's like arbitraging or receiving some economic benefit without creating any economic value. And it's in some ways, it's sort of what wholesaling is, although wholesaling, you're searching for a deal. So you're actually, the value you're creating is like actively seeking, you're a marketer. But it'd be the idea of, if I was given some incentive by the government where whatever could be bought at 100% of value, I was given the ability to buy it at 80% of that value. I'm not creating anything. I'm not adding anything to the system. I'm just kind of siphoning off this little piece for myself. And, I think a lot of the small time investing ends up being, to some degree, think of it as that kind of economic rent seeking. And again, without all of the negative connotations, you really want to just think and focus and define what you're actually trying to do. Are we trying to just buy things for less than they're worth? Or are we trying to take a position based on a long-term economic outlook that we have some information on and we are willing to take that position? I think the best strategy is probably to do both. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of what we're doing, I think it's, and that's kind of the overarching similarity. We're trying to just find these deltas that we're able to buy at.
Right. Well, not that I have a crystal ball either on what's going to happen, but having been doing, commercial real estate and residential real estate for, I guess, 15 years or so now, one thing that I can tell you is that this feels a lot like 2007 and 8 to me, where the greed in the enthusiasm and the amount of cash chasing the deals is at, basically unprecedented levels. So my advice to you, I guess, would be to have some liquidity so that not only do you have the money to withstand if something goes wrong on one of your assets, but also you have some cash available to buy for an even better value when things kind of turn around. So I've always found there's, like you alluded to earlier, there's a blend there to kind of the short-term and the long-term views on things. You don't want to be all jilted towards one or the other, because then you're not really
exposed.
Diverse. Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to do right now is only enough. It still needs to fit my box. Will you tell the story of your mentor in the hotel brokering? Let's get that on record somewhere. About you were bringing him deals and he wasn't buying them. You know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah. So my first mentor in this business was Greg Tim, and he had a hotel brokerage out in Eden Prairie called Tim and Associates. And in around 2006 or so, he had an Econo Lodge, I believe it was, down in Iowa that was purchased by the city on an eminent domain deal, and they were going to put some sort of other city works there. And so he ended up getting what was called a 1033 exchange, very similar to the 1031 exchange, except for that
two better.
Yeah, it's at least two better.
Yeah.
And but you basically got the tax-free deferral, but you had a longer time period to place your money because the government was the one who made you do it, so they give you a little little extra time, right? So he comes to me and he says, Ryan, I want to buy a hotel in the Twin Cities, and I want to buy it at a 3 times room revenue multiple, and I've got $1 million to $1.5 million cash ready to go. So I'm looking for hotels in the $3 to $4 million range, basically, for him. And the first one I bring to him was at a valuation of 3.25 times the room revenue. And he pushes it off his desk and says, I said 3 times, come back to me with something at 3 times. And I was like, okay, but I'm telling you, this is the price, okay?
Right.
And then I come back a couple weeks later with another one, or maybe a month later, I don't remember exactly, and it's at a 3.5 times multiple. And he said, nope, I'm a buyer at 3. And I said, well, if you were a buyer at 3.25 a month ago, you'd be already in a better position than you are today. Said, nope. I've been doing this for a long time. I understand the fundamentals of this business a lot better than you will, son. So so I go back out there and I find another one for him, and this one it's at 3.75 times. And I go back to him with a little smug tone in my voice and say, don't you wish you would have bought that first one at 3.25? You'd already be at, you'd already have about $600,000 in equity just in a few months. And he said, nope, I don't buy at that rate. That doesn't make sense for me. So lo and behold, this kind of goes on, and then his 1033 period lapses, so he just basically has to take the tax hit on the money anyhow, and then the stock market immediately crashes thereafter. And so I had no idea about anything in the stock market other than that there were companies that I had credit cards of in my wallet that were who's like Citigroup and Chase and stuff, whose stock had gone down 98% in a few months, and I'm like, and then you started hearing on the news bailout, bailout, bailout. At that point, I thought, I'm just going to put all my money into these companies that are clearly going to receive bailouts and then ride it up. And he's like, well, that's not a terrible idea. So he took his $1 million that he had sitting on the sidelines and put it into those things and, made about a 10x return on his money in 3 months.
Did you leverage that into the stock? No.
That was just straight up. So, I mean, we were getting 3, 4, 5, 800% returns in a few weeks, all the time back then.
Jeez.
Yeah, oh yeah, if I could go back in time. I mean, I actually just looked the other day. The Citigroup stock I bought at 90 cents is at $75 a share, and it's split 4 times since then, too, or something. So I split at least once, so it's pretty crazy. So anyways, he did have some foresight there, and then what happened next is what really dazzled me. He called up the Metro HRH, which was the servicer for the SBA, and said, hey, when these hotels start coming back, I got $10 million cash, holler at your boy. And sure enough, they started calling him because nobody had any money and even less people had money and a desire to buy hotels. So he started buying hotels then for, and other assets for like 25 cents on the dollar. So I don't know what that shook out to in terms of the 3 times room revenue multiplier, but I'm pretty sure it was less. I'm pretty sure he did well. But the takeaway from that story really for me was there's certain investment fundamentals that if you look at things over a 30 or 40 or 50 year period, that those are kind of the averages, right? And when they're over that average, so like using commercial real estate as an example, let's just say the average cap rate of an apartment building is 7% over a 40-year period. Now they're down in the high 4s, low 5s, right?
Yes.
And 10 years ago, they were in the 9, 10, 11, right? So if you're buying now, you're buying at a lower than average cap rate. So
right, lower returns than
general.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the main takeaway for me. And what I gleaned from that whole lesson too was I created a certain set of disciplines for myself where I only will buy at a cap rate that's at least 2 to 3% higher than the interest rate in which I can borrow at. So,
no, I think that's exactly what I got out of that story too. I still remember you telling me that 3 years ago, and so my strategy right now is, yes, these assets might be overvalued, and I'm trying to then buy at 70% of market value, and there's still the possibility of losing. If assets go to 50% of value, you're in a bad position. Hopefully, the liquidity exists to weather it. Currently, everything that we have definitely do. That's not an issue, and the only thing you can't predict is how much it could go down. I think there are certain limits to that, so it's never going to be worth nothing. Like, there's always some value to it. Otherwise, we'd take all of it, right? But, right now, I'm trying to buy these assets 70%. I feel like I'm spinning my wheel so much trying to find the deals that are right. And I'm trying to do it in such a way where I could do them myself, but I'm still engaging the investor base because I want the credibility to point to a resume and also go to these people so basically, if you're my investor, Ryan, I want to take a check from you, one bag of money. I want to hand you back 2 bags of money and say, hey, this was fun, wasn't it? And everyone else right now is trying to speculate and invest on real estate. Remember that I gave you 2 bags of money now, but while you're doing that, also remember that 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years from now, no one else is going to want to invest in real estate anymore. Your financial advisor is going to be like, sell it, stay away, they're toxic assets. And that's going to be when I'm going to really come to you and I'm going to say, I want to buy everything. How much can we free up? How much can we have ready to deploy? And that's the point where we get to really build some sort of dynastic wealth. So to me, it's about creating a short-term return, building those relationships and demonstrating to people your competency while still practicing market fundamentals to set up, build the relationships, and continue to coach and keep that flow of capital open during the recession when everyone else's sources of capital begin to dry up.
I mean, I think that's brilliant to plan that far ahead because I can look back at my own situation and how much cash I had going into the Great Recession, and I think I had about $40,000 total. And look what I did with $40,000. I mean, and some gumption, right? Imagine if I had $1 million next time around.
Right.
I'd be a billionaire.
Yeah.
For real.
Right.
Andre, you had a thoughtful list of about 7 to 10 questions here that we haven't touched on. Do you want to?
I think that was Jake.
Oh, was that Jake?
Yeah.
Okay. My apologies.
I did have something, both of your stories in, correlation to your mentors kind of had some adherence to strict standards or, getting some guiding principles, all this kind of stuff. This is kind of a question for both of you and kind of for our listeners that are maybe looking to just get started. They're kind of wrapping their head around real estate. What exactly do both of you look for in mentors, either now or in the past?
I think number one is, have they done the things that you aspire to do? I don't take my financial advice from poor people, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't take my business advice from people who don't run businesses, and I don't take my health advice from people who aren't doctors. So I would say number one is, do they do what you want to do, okay? And then second thing I would say, if you're going to be more of the recipient of the mentorship, do your very, very best to provide some reciprocation to that mentor. Understand that there's very little in it for them unless you're working for them and helping them to achieve their goal. So like even the two biggest mentors in my life were that Greg Tim and Scott Everett. I worked for both of them. I made them money. I learned a lot from them, and then I took those principles and I applied it to creating my own business. And so just understand if you're going to be the mentee that you're going to have to pay some dues, to get that knowledge.
Agreed.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, and I've kind of updated my mentor criteria through conjunction with Ray Dalio's recommendation again, which is, have they done that thing 3 times, and can they credibly and clearly articulate the process that they went through to accomplish that goal? And if they can, that's probably a very good mentor to have, and they're probably very credible in what they're able to do. The hardest thing is, do they have time? How do I connect with that mentor? And I had this, I ended up watching this video. It was very interesting. This guy, he worked for Goldman Sachs, I think it was Goldman. Yeah, doesn't matter. And when he showed up, I mean, number one, it was pretty crazy, the training criteria that they put those guys through. There was a 6-month training course, and the 6 months that they were there, they weren't allowed to make a single phone call. They were being set up to make a phone call, and they had to wear a headset the entire time that they were there, even though they weren't allowed to make any calls. And they're like, why do I have to wear this? I can't call anyone. He's like, that's just a part of your body now. Get used to wearing it, because as soon as you're ready, you're going to be released. Well, when that guy was looking for his mentor, he found the perfect person, and again, you got to create value for them. But a lot of times it's like, how do I create value for this person? And it can be really difficult. So what he ended up finding, because he couldn't make money directly for this person, is he sent an email and he said, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount, and it was a significant amount relative to his, Goldman salary, so maybe it's $50,000, say. He's like, I'm going to give you $50,000 every year, and all I want you to do is prioritize the answering of my email. And the guy's like, what? Huh? But he showed that he was willing to put skin in the game. Because the thing that happens, I've had probably 10 people reach out to me for mentorship, and I'm like, okay, step 1, do this. And then 3 months later, they'll show back up, and they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? You don't hear from them again. And they go, blah, 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 like whatever excuse they have, right? And you're like, how's that task going? And they're like, oh, it's just about to start that. And you're like, well, why would I tell you? Like, you see no value in what I'm providing. You have no value that you're trying to provide me. Why would I try and help you? So if you look into it as, how do I create value first? I mean, again, Isaac Keene did such a good job of that. He's like, I'll work for free. I want to do whatever. You just tell me. We had another interview, didn't go quite the same.
No.
And the impression is just so different.
I think you're spot on in terms of ingratiating yourself when you're a mentee seeking a mentor. I can tell the story of when I met you and how you approached me, which I thought was very attractive, we'll say. You came to me and said, I already have taken the test to get my real estate license. I passed. All that's good to go. So that was like a burden off my shoulders because I didn't even have to explain that to you. You had already talked to multiple other competitors of mine, which also was a bonus for me because that meant that you had done your due diligence, you knew what you were doing, what you were getting into, you had done research on me and my company going into it, and you were able to, regurgitate a few facts and then also answer the question, why do you want to work here as compared to someone else?
I read the website, the entire thing. I opened every page, I read the entire website, and I came in with that.
Yeah, you did. And then I think one of the kickers that you came to me with, there was two things. One, you said, I'm financially solvent for at least 6 months, so I'm here ready to work for free and learn. And I'm ready, willing, and able to do anything that you asked me to do to become successful, right?
Yeah.
And so you literally did. You showed up to the office without a paycheck, and you wore a suit every day, too, for probably about the first 6 months or something.
Yeah.
And not any particularly attractive suits, but but to me that was so critical. A lot of times I'm sure you can relate to this, Daniel. You meet people every day who want basically a job. They want the security of a salary, and they want the upside of a business owner and or commissioned sales agent, and they want you to take all the risks. They want you to absolve them of all of that and pay them for it and teach them and everything like that. That's a very unattractive proposition that puts all the risk on the mentor, whereas if you're willing to, be the paper boy, and coffee boy or whatever and do anything that's asked of you at the beginning, I think that'll help. And we just talked about this the other day too, Jake and I, Charles Schwab. Everybody knows that name. Everybody knows that company. That guy started out as the personal assistant to Dale Carnegie. Walked into his office at 14 years old and said, "What can I do to, make a buck, sir?" And his gumption and his attitude was what made him eventually the right-hand man and closed the biggest deal in U.S. history for the consolidation of the financial industry as a very young man. So,
yeah,
what a baller!
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, if anyone out there is listening and kind of digs what either Daniel or Ryan is saying, now you know how to approach them a little better, as a mentor.
Be humble, be hungry. Yeah. I think that's important.
No doubt.
I haven't got time for anybody who isn't both of those things. Looking for my mentorship, I can tell you. So,
no doubt.
Exactly.
Time is a valuable commodity. Let's look through these gems of questions here. Go ahead.
We were kind of going over how you got started in real estate. Do you kind of want to give your story, what you were doing before, all that kind of stuff? What was the decision process?
How far back do you want to go?
See my smile?
Yeah.
This is always my favorite.
Immediately before this, I was a professional ballroom dancer. Before that, I was multiple-time
at
college.
Chippendales.
Multiple-time college dropout, pursuing a bunch of different majors, and including theater. Did some theater for a while, played poker, used that. That was my primary source of income for a number of years. Did some mixed martial arts. But really, just, I don't know. I don't know how I ended up here in particular. Actually, poker. I was playing in some pretty big games in Minnesota, relatively, nothing too amazing, but enough such that the people who were playing in them were like, "Kid, go buy real estate. Like, you've got money right now, and it's like 2011. Just go, you can't miss. Just go buy something." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, old man, what do you know about anything? I'm going to live hard and die hard or whatever. And so anyway, they ended up shutting down online poker. It cost me a lot of money. And whatever, continued, progressed through, was competing at ballroom dancing, and my body started failing a little bit. My partner moved away. And I ended up kind of circling back in my head to those guys talking about real estate. And I had some people who were affiliated with me at the time who were also in real estate, and they made the recommendation that I get into it. So I kind of combined the investment side with my desire to, just have a job and be able to. I was making probably $28,000 a year dancing, and reached out to Ryan and thought that this was going to be a good fit. I liked personally what they were doing, and I also liked what the company was doing and was impressed by what they had built, and decided, okay, I'm going to do that too. And the one deal that really stuck out to me, I don't know do you remember the deal where it flipped for me?
Maybe. Can you give me a little more details?
I forget. It was a West 7th property.
Okay.
And I had a client who was going to purchase it, and she decided, she got quotes, just didn't quite work. So she passed. So I'm like, well, let me just take it to Ryan, Goran, and Dario. And I just pitched them. Page, does that sound like a property?
Oh, I've been there. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. It was like
4-bed, 2-bath.
Yeah, it was like 214, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we bought or
yeah, you bought it,
and then kind of flipped it and hold it.
That was
right?
the Winifred one, wasn't it?
No,
that was I was here during that time.
So anyway, that was a different one. This is I'm like 6 to 8 months into the business, right? And I'm just, what am I doing with all my time? I'm making cold calls from 9 a.m. and leaving at 4 o'clock, which I'd still yell at myself for that now for not staying until 5. But cold calls all day, and then I'd go home and I'd do investment analysis, at least 3 every single night. So I was getting a little bit better at analyzing a deal. I'd look at it, and I'd pull comps, and I'd look at it. I'm like, I think this would work for my client. She didn't. So I pitched it to you guys. I'm like, I think this is a deal. So I got you guys to come out and look at it, and it was listed for $140, and I was just beating this listing agent up the whole time because I got no money. I'm trying, right? I got 6 months of solvency, but now I got nothing else. Like, this is everything. So I'm just trying to get my fee. I just keep beating this guy up, and I got him down like probably another $28,000 or something. So it was listed at $140. I think we ended up getting it done at like $115. And you guys came in and you stuck $25,000 into it and got it reappraised at like $280,000. And I got an $1,800 fee. And I was like, You remember that? You're like, we're going to buy you a suit now. We're going to buy you some real clothes. And I was like, these guys made like $120,000. I made $1,800. I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's when I approached Dario and Goran, and I'm like, hey guys, if I find deals, can I be in the partnership? And they're like, no.
Kind of already too many cooks.
Yeah, there's too many of us. Sorry, we just don't have room in the partnership, right? They're very respectful about it, and like, I was 9 months into the business. I didn't know. I found one winner, right? But I'm like, I'm going to replicate this thing, and I'm going to find people who do have money who will put it up, and I'm going to start flipping these things myself. And continued working on the brokerage side, but then just kind of through force of will was just willing. And unfortunately on that business, because you guys weren't really flipping houses, you were just renovating and keeping them. So you were doing holds.
We were doing the holds because it made so much more sense from a tax perspective. It was in line with my, duck, dive, dodge the tax man. So
100%. But so I was at a weird position, and I did it the hardest way possible. Like, I did it kind of with no mentor because no one I knew was flipping houses. But I'm like, I think I could do this. So we started. So probably it took about 6 months later. I flipped my first house in South Minneapolis. Dario did the contract. I mean, it was so easy. I just showed up, and I'm like, I bought this for like $140. The comps are like $260. Dario, can you make this into a $260,000 house? And he's like, you got it, buddy. And he just did it. I didn't even see it until it was done. And put it back up, listed it, and I think I made $50,000 something, split with the equity side, of course. But from that, I'm like, this seems way more fun. And also, I didn't realize, like, I didn't have someone yelling at me the whole time about, like, hey, why isn't this done in time? Or if there's a $300 little thing in the negotiation, they're not just, like, mad about it and getting it emotional. And I'm like, I like working for myself, I think.
It is.
No doubt.
So flipping your own properties really is what, motivated and excited me. So I started trying to find as many properties as I could. Got so hard just to find deals. I was doing some of those contract for D deals that I like. I had some rentals as well. And eventually, I was just spinning my wheels, trying to find deals. Couldn't find them too often. Was doing pretty well, but not what I wanted to do. And that was really just kind of serendipitously when I ran into Rafiq. And I'll never forget, he kind of pulled me aside. He did a podcast with us, and he's just like, why are you selling these small boxes? Just sell bigger boxes. Do the same thing you're doing. He's like, I was flipping 100 houses a year. He's like, you know how hard that is? It's like the margins just get smaller and smaller the more you do. He's like, just bigger boxes. I'm like, huh? I didn't even think about it. And the hardest thing with commercial real estate, I don't know if you feel like this even still or ever did, but it's not as prestigious. Like, there's something fun about saying, I own 100 units. I have this many units, versus saying, I own a really big retail building. People are like, so? People don't care. They don't think that's cool.
I mean, maybe it's not as, I don't know if prestigious is the right word, but I think it's something that not a lot of people really think about. So when I was selling hotels, for example, when I would say I was a hotel broker, they looked at me confused, like, what is that? They didn't even conceive of the fact that hotels were real estate that people sold.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of the spectrum, on residential, you have like 38 television shows romanticizing, buying, fixing, and flipping and stuff like that. So the public awareness is really the difference, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that there's like an overrepresentation in like the smaller residential deals, and then it dips down to maybe like that smaller mid-size like retail, and then of course it'll go back up if you have like Trump Tower or something like that. Obviously, that's pretty something like that would be prestigious. But yeah, there's that kind of like middle ground.
Well, how about even industrial? Like that's I think no one thinks that's sexy except for people who are in commercial real estate, and then they love it. Like commercial real estate people love that industrial product.
Yeah, it's hard for me to not be biased because I'm in the industry, but to me it's I'm always impressed by net assets and
square feet.
Net operating income. I mean, those are the two things. Like, I don't really care if you have 1,000 unit apartment building or 1,000 single family houses. I mean, it's all impressive to me. So
it's kind of funny though, because I feel like if you go to a MNREIT or something and you're like, I own 1 million square feet of industrial, and people are just like look at you like, huh? So how many houses do you have, nerd?
That's an interesting perspective. I guess I've never really felt that way, but I can definitely tell you that there is a prestige factor to owning things that, like restaurants, like for example your Octofish that you guys have. When I was talking to some group of would-be real estate investors about buying an office building, buying residential, and then I mentioned the Octofish deal to them, they got all excited about the prestige factor.
Sure.
So I noticed that when I was in the hotel business too. I mean, if you had like a little American in some little town you never heard of in Minnesota, that's got people a lot less interested than the Hilton across from the airport next to the Mall of America. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Or the Hewing.
Yeah, any of them. I mean, like you name it. If you drive by it and you can see the skyscraper of a building every day, and however many cars drive by it, there's a prestige factor that kind of gets people excited.
I think people always overpay for a Fauché Tower or something just because it's got that historical, people want to say they own Fauché Tower.
Yeah, it is. It's true. There's a certain prestige factor for some.
Yeah.
Sure. No doubt.
What are the questions you want to ask the man Daniel Kurkowski here today? I feel like we've gone over quite a bit here. I mean, maybe we should break this up into about 11 more podcasts.
For sure.
Could do it for hours and hours.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I must say, I fully endorse the VSM podcast, and it's a much classier operation than I was a part of it, because they have water for their guests. Like, that is a huge deal.
We did. Remember back when we used to do it in the other office that's now Andre's, and we had the little soundproofing and all that kind of stuff? I mean, I kind of like that.
The little cave.
Yeah.
I like this water situation, man. I'm feeling hydrated, rested.
We can bring the water to the cave.
We had the Culligan cups last time, though, remember?
Yeah, I do.
You think you'd really prefer the
this
bottles,
is better.
though?
Yeah, correct.
Gotcha. All right. We'll make sure we keep bottled water.
This is a classy organization you guys are running.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah.
Doing our best.
So you kind of give your history and whatnot. What's kind of next? You continue building Obsidian Group, obviously.
Yeah.
What do you kind of see in the future?
So I think a lot of it is just continuing to accumulate the capital in such a way that it is prepared to release itself when everyone else is running the opposite way. Because you kind of make money being a contrarian, and I think right now it's, I'm kind of only buying home runs. I'm only buying deals that make a lot of sense because I'm anticipating that adjustment. Mm-hmm. But I really just want to set everything up and get our systems in place, get everybody on, because everyone makes 50 phone calls a day at our company right now, prospecting. Make sure everyone's in that habit, tracking leads, following up, that we are bringing just an A-plus product to the market, so that when it's time to really hit the ground and start expanding our capacity, we're ready, and that we have everything set up in place. We've made the mistakes, and we can just kind of now let the machine run. So I'm just trying to build a machine let the machine run. That's it.
Do you make them wear headsets?
I don't.
Oh.
No.
Are you going to, though?
Yeah.
Yes.
For 6 months.
Correct.
I can picture you having a Boiler Room-esque Ben Affleck moment with a group of would-be commercial real estate.
You know what the problem with that is, though? He's got that scene. He throws his keys in. He just goes, "That's a Ferrari. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a dinosaur around here. You want a Ferrari? You got to be like me. I'll never own a Ferrari."
Yeah.
You see the cars I drive.
Whoever said money can't buy happiness doesn't have enough. See my smile? Ear to ear, baby.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think I quite have that with I don't do anything with money, so.
Yeah, that's
Except
true.
for buy real estate, right? Yeah.
They're just tickets to play the game, man.
That goes to my
just keep going.
point that I made at that seminar the other day, though. If you close your eyes and think about what do you covet and what do you want to buy, and the fact that you can just say, I want to buy more assets, tells me that you have a very rich person's mentality. I, unfortunately, have a rap star's personality. I want Rolls Royce and Ferraris and
12
big
cars,
chains. And,
yeah.
you know.
garage, yeah. Awesome.
So I guess I just have to force myself to have a rich person's mentality during the day, and then when I close my eyes, I can go back to being.
That's right.
A
Perfect.
rock star. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being our guest, André.
Thanks for having me. This
you
was
wanna
fun.
you wanna wrap it up?
For sure. Yeah. Just so everybody who's interested in contacting you, where could they find you?
André at VSMRealestate.com.
Perfect.
And then no, just kidding. You can find me at Daniel at ObsidianGroup.com. You can find Obsidian Group on Facebook, Instagram. Our website's ObsidianGroup.com. You can find me. Just Google me. I got plenty of weird ways to. I try and put my phone number on everything that I do. So I'm happy to talk to anybody.
If you Google him, you'll find him. He's there's only one other Daniel Kurkowski in the United States of
That's very common.
Yeah.
Yeah.